All right, so we have nature and nurture. Nature is heredity, nurture is environment. Genes guide maturational processes, maturation being the unfolding of the genetics, how we grow. So our genes, say, at 6 years old, have a brain spurt. Brain growth spurt. Not just brain spurt, that sounds weird. Brain growth spurt. And the brain really changes at 6 years old. That is why we have kindergarten and preschool, and then we have elementary school, because elementary school age kids are very different than pre-elementary. Their brain is different. And genetics determines that. Every culture throughout all of history, 6-year-old kids are different than 5-year-old kids. Puberty, you have another brain growth spurt. And a kid who is post-puberty is going to think very differently than pre, which is also why we have elementary school and high school. And then you have middle school because puberty happens at different ages. It doesn't all happen at the same time. But the genes determine that. Genes determine how the brain is growing and so on. So genetics is important. Like I said, we also have biologically based predispositions. So that's, you're born with a tabula rasa that's already written on, but it's chalk, so you can erase it, you can write more, and so on. Environment, your learning experiences cause change in your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And most people nowadays take an interactionist view, which is that both are important. You can't ignore genetics and you can't ignore environment. If you ignore one of them, then you are missing a big part of the picture. Why are the Danish happy? If happiness is genetic, it could just be that they have better genetics. But we look at growth. Oh, I'm sorry, you guys aren't done yet? All right.
It's on Blackboard, right?
This is on Blackboard.
Oh.
It's still good to take notes, though. It helps your brain to make neuronal connections.
Yes.
Okay.
And like a muscle memory.
Muscle memory, yeah. So you may, since this is on Blackboard, you might want to consider printing this out for the next class or printing out the next chapter's PowerPoint. And you can write notes on that. Or just sort of write, don't try to copy it verbatim, just try to put the important things that you're hearing. That's a better way to take it.
All important.
It's all important, yes. I love when students ask me, did I miss anything important? Yeah, I was talking, wasn't I? All important. You're a teacher. All right, so good? Yes? So growth is another term that we look at. I heard somebody squealing. These are the physical changes occurring from birth to maturity. It's changing. It's changing, it's changed. Physical changes occurring from birth to maturity. So we will talk about some of the physical changes. For instance, your eyesight. My grandma is losing her eyesight, and it is really affecting her mental health. Okay? She got, what's it called when the retina dislodges?
Detachment.
Yeah. And now she has glaucoma.
Oh.
Mostly because her entire life, all she's eaten is McDonald's and Coke. Pretty much. She's like sugaraholic. Huge
You think that's
sugaraholic.
why?
Yes, because she got diabetes.
Oh.
Yeah. And so that affects the eyesight. Luckily, she's managed to get the diabetes to go away, but now she's got permanent damage in her eyes. But she called my mom crying the other day, which is terrible when you hear your 83-year-old grandma crying about losing her eyesight. But your physical changes are going to dramatically affect how your mental health is, whether for good or for bad. Puberty, right? That is a physical change, but it affects your mental health significantly. Teenagers have more depression than any other age group until you get to the really serious elderly. And then the depression skyrockets again. Suicide is biggest in teenagers and super, super elderly. And that's because of physical changes. And so
have you heard that it's on the precipice of a huge collapse with teenagers? I mean,
I think we've already gone over
because of the
precipice.
iPhone being so pervasive.
That's part of it, yeah. That's part of it. We also are raising super sensitive children.
Toughen up.
Toughen up, yeah. When I got bullied in school and I came home, my mom said, well, then hit him. That's what she told. That was the advice. If you get in one fight, then that reputation will follow you the rest of the school year, and then you don't have to worry about being bullied.
I get in fights all the time at school. My mom said, did they hit you first? I'm like, yeah. She goes,
okay.
My mom
Right?
told me that
That was the rule.
if they hit you first, then you make sure you're the one left standing.
yeah.
That was the rule.
But you do that nowadays. Now, in the high desert and some places in Southern California, teachers aren't quite so insane, and parents aren't quite so insane. But there's other places, like I have some nieces living in San Diego, Poway, Rancho Bernardo, somewhere like that. which is like the best school system in the country. And they got in a fight, and the police were called. So luckily, she wasn't arrested, and she was jumped after class by other students because she said that she thought Trump should be president. So she was jumped after class by 4 other girls, and she fought
And
back.
she was suspended. Too,
And then she was
right?
suspended. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. It's crazy, huh?
That's justice.
So yeah, our social system is really screwed up too. It's not just technology is playing a role. It's certainly playing a role, like cyberbullying and getting videos posted of you doing stupid. We all did stupid stuff, but we didn't have videos that followed us around for the rest of our life. But it's not the only cause for sure. All right, aging is another term you need to know. So, sorry, wrong button. Positive and negative changes in the mature organism. So remember, as you get older, we have a very negative view towards the elderly in our country. And as you get older, you have gains in your life as well. It's not all losses. That's generally how we think of the elderly, which is one of the reasons why suicide rates are so high with the elderly, because they're viewed as burdens. And they're not contributors to society. For example, when Obamacare came out, the original Obamacare had death panels. So when you were 50 years old, you were required to go see a death counselor who would advise you on the best ways to commit suicide. Look it up, I'm not making it up, that was on the original Obamacare. And then of course when people found out, everybody threw a fit and it was dropped. So 50 years old, now you are useless to society, which is insane, especially for women. Because women are at their most productive around 50 years old. Kids are out of the house, they're post-menopausal, so they're the most emotionally stable they've ever been in their life. Everybody should look forward to menopause, because once you get through it, you're gold. But now you're useless, which is insane. Right? So really, what are women useful for except breeding? I mean, that's a really weird attitude, right? And I don't know about you, but my grandma's 83, and I keep trying to get her to move in with me because she's like doing my dishes all the time. I have a ranch. So I live on 40 acres. We have cows and horses and everything. And she comes even at 83 years old and she's like raking stuff up, and I would hate to not have my grandma around.
That's how my grandma was.
Yeah.
She was 92.
Yep. Yeah. My grandma's gonna work until she's probably gonna keel over raking up some cow manure or something.
Mine is in her 80s when she was out in the yard,
Yeah.
pulling the weeds with her bare hands. I was like, oh.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Hey, look here, let me do this.
But I'm from Haiti, so it's different out there.
Oh, are you? You were born there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So subcultures. Now, remember, everything in psychology is generalities. So generally speaking, there's a negative attitude towards the elderly in our country. But if you look at subcultures like other countries, African Americans tend to have a much more positive viewpoint of the elderly. Grandmas are great for helping you to raise your kids. If you are a white American, and remember, there's no such thing as white. If you're a white person, you don't like being called white because it's like, I'm not white, I'm Irish American or whatever. So there are very big differences between an Irish American versus a Polish American versus a Russian American. I am not the same as a German American at all. And I'm not Scottish. I'm Irish. Okay, that's a big insult. Don't call me a Scottish person. I'm Irish. And Scottish people don't want to be called Irish. But if you're not white, then that may not be part of your zeitgeist of viewing white American culture. But each of those subcultures are going to have very different attitudes towards the elderly. Irish tend to be a bit more positive towards the elderly. Like my family, we love our old people. They're hilarious. If you are English descent, you probably have more of a negative attitude towards the elderly. They're a bit more burdens. If you are colony level American, so like my dad's side of the family has been here since the 1600s. They were one of the first families to pioneer the state of Indiana. There's 3 white families that went into Indiana, and my dad's family was one of them. Those people, if you descend from that stock, like if your family came over on the Mayflower, right? So we always say my great-grandmother did. She loved that before she died. Here's how all of us came over on the Mayflower. If you come from that stock, then you have a very negative attitude towards the elderly. They're burdens. And of course, those are generalities, but we have to remember that there are subcultures to these sort of things. Anybody come from that sort of pre-American stock? No? Now, if you are just a mutt, then and you don't really know what your history is, that's another type of culture. So like when I got my degree for family therapy, I took a multiculturalism class where we learned what are the different attitudes of different races, and especially with therapy. So if you're doing therapy with an Irish person, don't ask me to deal with my emotions. That's not like, no. If you're doing therapy with an Egyptian, expect there to be a lot of yelling. So there's very different attitudes in these subcultures. So that environment is playing a role, but it could also be partially genetic, like the happiness and depression. All right, so some more terms. So if you look at these groups, why do we group them together? What's the obvious thing? Easy question. Age. Okay. Does this make sense, the way they're grouped? Does it make sense, the ages that they're grouped at? Yeah. Okay. Why?
They're similar.
Right age groups.
Similar. It's a hard question to answer. Like, why do we group them together? They all fit in, okay?
They have
So
the same maturity level.
same maturity level. So we know there's toddlers, now we call them tweens. There's
College.
young adult, college age. Okay, we have other groups, teenagers, middle age, elderly. We kind of skip from middle age to elderly, and that's a really big age group. But we know that they're 30-year-olds. I don't know, 30-year-olds just sort of get left behind. Yeah. 30 sucks for women. Right? You finally feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not a young person anymore. This is what we call age grade. These are socially defined age groups. When I was a kid, there was no such thing as tweens. I remember when that word came out, and I thought it was so weird. What is a tween? Kids between teenage years and elementary. It wasn't really a thing. There's like elementary, and there was teenage. And yeah, there was junior high, but nobody really thought of that as a distinct age group. That was just, some kids were pre-puberty and some weren't. But there wasn't like a distinct culture of tweens. That's a new word that I don't know of any cultures that have had that. I mean, there might be some, but so,
I didn't.
yeah. So maybe we're losing that word now too.
So you're talking like toddlers,
Yeah.
tweens, teens.
Mhm.
So many stuff.
Yes, and so these are not, I mean, they make sense.
Would that be the
right?
millennial and the Gen X, all that's included in this?
Yeah, I mean, you could make, we would more call that a cohort. So that's a generational age group
Okay.
that comes together. Age grade, it doesn't matter what generation you are, we have certain groups at certain ages. So we know that there's certain children that are toddlers, children, young adults, teenagers, whatever. Teenager is also a word that not all cultures have had. So when you get to teenage years, you're an adult. And so then there's adult, and then there's elderly. Middle age is something that not all cultures have had. So we often take these groups as just, like, it just makes sense. It's just how it is. But they're really socially defined. We haven't always thought of age groups this way. We also have a term, well, that's age grade, sorry. We also have a term for these groups where it's age norms, okay? Age norms. This means, what do we expect? What is typical of these age groups? So if you look at these groups again, how do we expect a toddler to behave? Bad. Immature, right? To not be able to, loud, okay? Do we expect the same of college kids? Kind of.
About loud, yeah.
They're loud.
They're still loud, they're still
kind of like
immature,
toddlers.
right?
Older toddlers.
But it's not the same sort of thing, right? We know by college age you can take care of yourself. Although that's sort of changed. Like when I was growing up, a college kid was expected to pretty much be an adult. Like by the time you get to college age, you should be self-sufficient on your own. You don't need mommy and daddy anymore. But nowadays our expectations have really changed. So I had a student a few semesters ago who said, what age should I let my son go out on his own and cross a major street and go to the store? She lived like a mile away from the store. And he had to cross a major street. I think it was Hesperia Road or something that he had to cross to get to the store. And I was like, well, it sort of depends on the kid's maturity. But I would probably start like at 6 years old trying to help my kids walk on their own. And by 7 or 8, the kids should, if you've been working with them, they should be able to cross that road on their own without you supervising them. That's my opinion. Definitely by 10. Like if your 10-year-old can't cross the street on their own, then yeah.
7 or 8 though?
Yeah,
I
always think
started
that's
working with my
so
sister's kid at 5.
I think 7's not.
Yeah. Now, my sister's kid is 6 now, and he still has a hard time paying attention. Like, he'll try to run through a parking lot or something. So when his sister was that age, she was fine. I could let her go out on her own. She was very responsible. But he's different. He's a bit slower to mature. So I wouldn't let him on his own yet.
Aren't all boys slower to mature? Women mature.
If you talk about generalities, then in some ways, yes. Intellectually, I would not say that they mature differently at all. But the way they think and the way they handle things is kind of different. It's very judgmental to say they're less mature and girls are more mature. It's a different way of looking at the world. Boys are more active, they're more energetic, more athletic, and we really look down on that, especially in the school system.
But that also depends on how they were raised too.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it depends on their genetics and all that sort of thing. But here's the thing, the student said, oh, well, my son is 16. He's 16 and he can't go a mile away from the house on his own and you don't trust him to cross the road? I mean, that's insane, right? That's helicopter parenting where mom hovers over. I mean, there's students who, like, I've had moms come and talk to me about their their kids' stuff at school. And, like, I can't legally talk to you. Your child is an adult, like, not even a minor. I can't tell you anything about your kid's progress. And your child should be able to come and talk to me by the time they're in college. It's crazy. And there's been, like, parents who walk down to graduate college with their kid because they were there the whole way, so why don't they get to graduate?
No way.
And the college is Lebanon. It wasn't here. But, yeah. Okay, so we have different expectations. A century or two ago, people this age would have been expected to be married, holding down their own career or job, running the farm on their own, running a house on their own. You were expected to have your crap together. You probably have 5 kids by that age. Right? I mean, nowadays, the average age to get married for a woman is 27. And most of history, that would have been considered, like, old age. Like, you're past your prime. You're on the shelf. You're an old maid. Like, nobody's got married now.
On the shelf.
You're on the shelf. On the shelf. Yeah. Never heard that? Oh, that's an old term.
Collecting
Yeah.
dust.
Right? Collecting dust. Right? And nowadays, it's like, if somebody has kids before 30, you're like, oh, they're so young. But really, like, your fertility's dropping and like, your ovaries are getting old. You should be having babies pretty soon here. 35 years old, just for you girls, so I can freak you out.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Here's the chart, okay? Fertility levels, right, goes up teenage years. 35, sorry. 40, yeah, really low. You have like an 8% chance of getting pregnant by 40. So, yeah. You're supposed to have babies in your 20s. Just not that I've had babies, so I'm not judging, but that's just physical issues are a thing, right? And we've changed our expectations. To get married or have kids in your 20s, it's almost weird now. Like, you expect older people. Watch any movie. Like, people having babies are in their 40s, which historically was weird. But fertility does drop eventually.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to hit menopause at some age. Men, your fertility, not so much. But the other thing that also happens is genetic disorders go up. So you have, as fertility drops, rates of autism, Down syndrome especially, things like that increases. Not like having Down syndrome kids, the end of the world. They're actually kind of nice. I can imagine.
Very sweet.
Yeah, they're very sweet. Yeah. So it's not the worst thing in the world, but obviously having a healthy kid would be better. But my point is that these are age norms. What are our expectations at these different age groups? And that's very socially based. Some of it is based on typical physical maturation. Everybody's going to expect a young adult to be more mature than a 2-year-old. Any culture throughout history. However, if you look throughout history, by 2 years old in many cultures, you're expected to be working and pitching in. It might be something really simple and little, but you should be being responsible for little things. You should be participating. We still expect a lot of play, but a lot of this is very socially based.